Some films become box office hits. Others become part of people's lives. Forrest Gump did both. Yet behind its unforgettable journey were battles that almost stopped production, a performance that nearly never happened, and a sequel Hollywood buried forever. The story behind the film is every bit as extraordinary as the one audiences watched on screen. Fact 15. Tom Hanks almost turned down Forrest Gump. Most people assume Tom Hanks accepted the role the moment he read the script. After all, it's impossible to imagine anyone else playing Forrest today. However, the truth was very different. When director Robert Zemeckis first approached Hanks, the actor wasn't convinced. Forrest wasn't written as the charming, lovable man audiences know today. Hanks worried that the character could easily become a cartoon instead of a real human being. He refused to simply perform what was on the page. Behind closed doors, the two spent hours discussing who Forrest really was. Scripts lay scattered across the table. Conversations stretched late into the day. Instead of following every line exactly, Hanks wanted the freedom to shape Forrest's personality, his innocence, and even the unusual Southern accent that would later define the character. Only after Zemeckis agreed did Hanks finally say yes. That single decision transformed an uncertain screenplay into one of the greatest performances in movie history. Fact 14. Robert Zemeckis nearly walked away. Audiences usually imagine the studio standing behind a future classic from the very beginning. Instead, Forrest Gump almost fell apart before production was fully underway. Paramount executives questioned nearly everything. The budget kept growing. The story didn't resemble a traditional Hollywood blockbuster. There were no superheroes, no explosions, and no obvious guarantee that audiences would embrace such an unusual film. Meeting after meeting became increasingly tense. Executives studied financial reports, while Zemeckis defended every creative decision. The pressure became so intense that walking away started to feel like a real possibility. Few people realized how close the project came to collapsing. If Zemeckis had given up at that moment, Forrest Gump might never have existed. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. Fact 13. Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis paid for a famous scene themselves. Many fans assume every memorable scene in Forrest Gump was fully funded by the studio. The truth was far more dramatic. When the production planned Forrest's famous cross-country running sequence, Paramount refused to pay for additional filming. The studio believed the scene was unnecessary and too expensive. Rather than remove it, Hanks and Zemeckis reached into their own pockets. They personally covered the cost so cameras could keep rolling. Wide highways stretched toward the horizon. Dust swirled beneath Forrest's running shoes. Crew members chased the sunrise, capturing images that would become some of the most recognizable in modern cinema. After seeing the finished footage, Paramount changed its mind and reimbursed them. That gamble preserved one of the defining moments of the entire film. Fact 12. Tom Hanks really ran across America. Watching Forrest run makes it seem effortless. But behind the scenes, almost nothing about those sequences was easy. Instead of relying heavily on stunt doubles, Tom Hanks completed many of the long-distance running shots himself across multiple states during production. Heat shimmered above empty highways. Cold mountain winds replaced the desert sun. Day after day, cameras followed him through constantly changing landscapes. His steady pace wasn't just acting. It became part of the rhythm that made Forrest's journey feel believable. Everything changed after that. Fact 11. A pair of shoes became a global icon. Few viewers paid much attention to Forrest's white running shoes during their first viewing. However, those shoes quietly made history. The Nike Cortez was simply chosen because it matched the period and suited Forrest's character. Nobody expected it to become one of the film's most recognizable symbols. As Forrest crossed bridges, highways, and dusty roads, the camera repeatedly returned to those worn white sneakers striking the pavement. After the movie became a worldwide phenomenon, demand for the Nike Cortez surged, turning a simple costume choice into one of the most famous shoes in pop culture. Sometimes, legends begin with something as ordinary as a single pair of shoes. Fact 10. Forrest Gump sparked unexpected controversy. Today, it's remembered as one of the most beloved films ever made. Many assume audiences and critics embraced it from the very beginning. However, that wasn't the case. When Forrest Gump premiered in 1994, not everyone saw it as a masterpiece. Some critics argued that its nostalgic view of American history was too sentimental. Others believed it oversimplified complex events. Newspapers, television programs, and film magazines quickly filled with opposing opinions. One theater erupted in applause as the credits rolled. Across town, another screening ended with heated debates in the lobby. Reviewers praised Tom Hanks while questioning the film's message. Few movies had divided opinions so dramatically. But time told a different story. Decades later, Forrest Gump is celebrated as a timeless classic, proving that audiences sometimes see greatness long before critics do. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. Fact 9. Gary Sinise lost his legs without losing a step. Lieutenant Dan's missing legs look completely natural on screen. The truth was far more complicated. In 1994, digital effects were still in their infancy. Instead of relying on a single trick, the filmmakers combined several techniques. Gary Sinise wore specially designed blue fabric over his legs in some scenes. In others, his legs disappeared behind carefully built sets. Every frame, then, had to be painstakingly altered by visual effects artists. The camera followed Dan across hospital beds, wheelchairs, and the deck of a shrimp boat. Water splashed against the rails. Waves crashed beneath him. Yet the illusion never broke. The groundbreaking work earned widespread praise and pushed visual effects another step forward in Hollywood. Everything changed after that. Fact 8. The floating feather was much harder than it looked. That delicate feather drifting through the sky appears almost effortless. Instead, it became one of the production's greatest technical challenges. The feather was filmed separately, then combined with computer-generated animation to control its impossible movements. Artists spent countless hours adjusting every twist, every turn, and every gentle landing so it would appear completely natural. Against a bright blue sky, the feather floated over rooftops, trees, and busy streets, before finally resting at Forrest's feet. That quiet opening didn't just begin a movie. It created one of the most recognizable images in cinema history. Fact 7. The movie's props became Hollywood treasures. Most movie props disappear once filming ends. For Forrest Gump, many became priceless artifacts. The famous suitcase, boxes of chocolates, shrimping equipment, costumes, and other memorable items were carefully preserved instead of being discarded. Over the years, several found their way into museums and private collections dedicated to film history. Objects that once sat under bright studio lights now rest safely behind glass, reminding visitors of one unforgettable journey. Those simple props became lasting pieces of Hollywood history. Fact 6. The famous bench is no longer in the park. Millions of fans dreamed of sitting on Forrest's bench. Few realized it isn't there anymore. After filming ended, the production removed the bench from its Savannah location to protect it from theft and constant damage. As Forrest's popularity grew, visitors searched for the exact spot, hoping to recreate one of cinema's most iconic moments. Today, the original bench is preserved indoors, while the park remains a destination for fans from around the world. Sometimes, protecting a legend means taking it out of sight forever. Fact 5. A simple pair of shoes changed pop culture. At first glance, Forrest's white running shoes seemed like nothing more than part of his costume. However, they became one of the film's most unexpected legacies. The Nike Cortez was chosen simply because it matched the time period and reflected Forrest's humble personality. No one on set imagined audiences would remember the shoes almost as much as the character wearing them. As Forrest crossed dusty highways, empty deserts, and crowded city streets, the camera repeatedly caught those white sneakers striking the pavement. They became a symbol of determination, innocence, and perseverance. After the film's release, demand for the Nike Cortez exploded around the world, transforming an ordinary running shoe into a cultural icon. Sometimes, history is made one step at a time. But that was only the beginning. Fact 4. Forrest really met 3 American presidents. Many viewers believed the filmmakers had somehow discovered never-before-seen archival footage. The truth was even more remarkable. Industrial Light and Magic digitally inserted Tom Hanks into historical footage featuring Presidents John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Richard Nixon. Artists carefully adjusted lighting, film grain, camera movement, and even facial synchronization to blend old footage with newly filmed scenes. The result was astonishing. Forrest shook hands with presidents, accepted awards, and appeared to stand inside some of America's most recognizable historical moments. For audiences in 1994, the illusion was almost impossible to detect. It redefined what visual effects could accomplish. Everything changed after that. Fact 3. Forrest Gump helped change Hollywood visual effects. Today, digital editing is everywhere. Back then, it was still breaking new ground. The techniques developed for Forrest Gump pushed visual effects far beyond simple computer animation. Instead of creating imaginary worlds, artists seamlessly rewrote real history. Every edited frame demanded extraordinary precision, convincing audiences that fiction and reality existed together. Behind glowing computer monitors, teams spent months perfecting tiny details invisible to most viewers. Those innovations influenced countless films that followed. The movie didn't just tell history. It quietly changed the future of filmmaking. Fact 2. It defeated 2 future masterpieces at the Oscars. Winning against Pulp Fiction and The Shawshank Redemption is something else entirely. When the envelopes were opened at the 67th Academy Awards, Forrest Gump claimed 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor. Inside the theater, applause filled the room. Outside, debates began almost immediately. Even decades later, film lovers continue arguing over whether the Academy made the right decision. Very few Oscar victories have remained this controversial for so long. And then came the biggest surprise of all. Fact 1. The sequel was written, then disappeared forever. Most blockbuster classics eventually receive a sequel. Forrest Gump almost did. Screenwriter Eric Roth completed a script, and discussions with Tom Hanks moved forward. The story would have followed Forrest into a new era of American history, continuing the extraordinary life that audiences had embraced. Then, everything changed. After the September 11th attacks in 2001, the filmmakers looked at the screenplay again. America had changed. The tone no longer felt right. Hanks later admitted the project simply couldn't move forward in the same world. The script was quietly shelved. One of Hollywood's most anticipated sequels never reached a single camera. More than 30 years later, Forrest Gump remains far more than an Oscar-winning film. It proved that kindness could outshine cynicism, that groundbreaking technology could serve emotion instead of spectacle, and that an ordinary man could tell an extraordinary story. Long after the final feather drifts across the screen, Forrest's journey continues to remind us why some films never stop moving forward.